So I was in a coma. Great conversation starter, I know. It's a complicated story. I had a surgery and it went bad and I got an infection and it attacked my lungs, and so then induced coma. So it was something called a medically induced coma. So I didn't just pass out. They actually gave me drugs and continuously gave me drugs for a good 2 weeks or so that I could be in this sleep state and they could try and heal me and get me to live. So many dreams, so many stories. So here you go. This is what it's like being in a coma. First things first, everything that happens in the real world you hear, you're aware of, you kind of know what's going on, but it goes through this weird filter thing in your brain, and by filter I mean it's going through the drugs, and then it turns into something else once it actually hits your consciousness. So example, I know a lot of people would come to visit and sit by my bed and talk to me. I heard my stepmom and my own nanny talking and all of that, and I heard what they were saying, but then in my head we were in a girls' camp, one of those log cabin camps, and they were gossiping about one of the other girls. Really, they were just talking about one of the nurses and something she had said, but in my head they were gossiping, and I was in on it too. I was talking back to them, but I wasn't actually talking. And sometimes this messes me up so much when I'm going and looking back on the whole experience. I remember so clearly saying something back to them and being oh yeah, that Peggy. I didn't say anything. So it was all a weird conversation in my head with everyone, and I wasn't even talking. Another thing that would happen was uncomfortable positions that they would put me in. My brain would make up a story for why I was in those positions. At one point, they had to actually tilt the bed in something called Trendelenburg, which is literally tipping you upside down. So there I was upside down and swollen like a balloon at that point. And in my head, I was going in this weird hammock thing. And then I remember I got my foot caught in the hammock, and so I was hanging upside down, and I was this is so weird, why can't I move? I should just be able to pull myself up. But then logic doesn't really work very well. The best part though, and the thing that kind of inspired a whole trip after I got out of the coma, was all of my Alaska hallucinations. I've never been to Alaska. I've never shown any interest in Alaska. But for some reason, while I was asleep, I kept going to Alaska in my head, and it was so beautiful. It was pine trees and coves, and I remember just sitting there and just staring at the most beautiful scenery ever for hours and hours, and there'd be a little deer off in the corner, and it would be freezing cold, but I didn't care. Turns out I was getting ice packed the whole time. So I had a crazy high fever with a crazy high infection, and what they do for that is they put ice packs all around you. That's literally the most advanced thing they can come up with. So being iced, I guess somewhere in my brain I thought ice, Alaska, totally makes sense. One of the funny things too was the way that people's voices, if I liked the person who was talking and I felt safe there, it would affect what was going on in my head. And I didn't notice this at the time, but once I came out, I kind of studied the whole experience. But every time it was my mom or my dad or people that I loved, it was someplace beautiful and it was comforting. And when it was people that I just kind of barely knew, it was always strange, and I had no idea where I was, and I felt kind of lost. And actually gets me thinking a lot about how that happens on a regular basis, even when we're not on crazy drugs. How do the people that we're around and the experience that we're in influence our brain and our minds and how we see the world? Pretty much being in a coma is just a very magnified and intense version of our own dreams. And so what can we learn from them, and what can we learn about ourselves? And I learned so much from that experience. I mean, first of all, that I love Alaska, apparently. But second of all, I really love, it showed me who I care about and who makes me happy, and how the world can be manipulated so easily, and how our own minds can be manipulated, and we can really believe so much. I don't know, talking about it kind of makes me happy in a weird way. You wouldn't think that, but yeah. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to comment, and I will make fun and interesting videos on them. All of my videos are, right? Right.